Well, alright then.
Hello?
Moshi moshi. Alright, and we're back. Episode 12. I keep forgetting that is actually how I've been doing that, like, by proxy as well, like, on the interview episodes. Like, if you listen to the Rope Baby one, you'll actually hear me, like, slowly creep up and then...
Yeah, I do remember that one, yeah.
Again, welcome back.
Hello.
Episode 12.
I feel so welcomed into my own house.
I know. I mean, I try to make everybody feel welcome, except...
I appreciate that.
except for a specific demographic of people that we will not get into today. Now, that being said, today's topic, before we get into that, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, as well as subscribe to all of the podcast places, Google, Spotify, Apple, and we can't forget our patron saint of where we're hosting all of our stuff, Pornhub.
The Hub.
The Hub has been very, very nice to us.
The people on the Hub have been very nice to us.
Actually, yeah, I can concur. Thank you all for all the views. You're fantastic. Smooches. And YouTube. Don't forget YouTube, even though YouTube is our bastard child because no one likes watching on YouTube for some reason, even though we have more.
I think YouTube just never recommends us.
I don't think they will either because we're not even... So we have 17 subscribers on YouTube.
We're naughty.
And the minimum requirement to even get any form of like monetization or recommendation is at 1,000 views or 100 subscribers. We may never get to that as far as on YouTube is concerned, but I do appreciate everybody that is listening. We do love you. Thank you. Now for today's topic. We spoke last episode about ritualism and kink. So today, we continue and kick it off with spirituality.
Yeah, now we're going to talk about the thing you thought we were going to talk about last time.
Exactly. So, as far as spirituality and kink, I can see...
Yeah, because you have some history with this one, right?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, as far in the sense that it makes sense that my little Catholic body at the moment of conceptualizing everything was like, oh, I'm a sinner. I enjoy punishment. That kind of clicked. So that was the little baby boy brain at that young age, figuring all that stuff out. But I've seen some people that actually are relatively religious, relatively spiritual, that do invest their life in kink. And that's an interesting concept, considering that most Abrahamic religions, we'll start with the Muslim faith, and then we'll work our way down to Catholicism and Christianity, and I wouldn't say so much of the Judeo faith, because I've met a few Jewish people in the kink scene, and they're lovely. They doesn't say anything about like kink being that very, very bad thing. Right. But if you talk to some Christians and some Muslims, the concept of sexuality is still a very big no-no. Right.
Or very heavily regulated.
Yes. We can take it in from using the hijab as one of the things where the sexualization of females, like you cannot see anything but their eyes. In some cases, others, it's their entire face. Only their husband can see them like that. Right. Whereas you take a step back into like the Catholic and Christian faith, there's a lot of interesting, weird things that come about that. Like the whole idea of like you're supposed to only ever sleep with one person and get pregnant with one person. So you have some of these people that are kinky. Yeah. And that's what we're going to kind of be talking about today, is how there is... We, as kinky people, we're accepting of all faiths, religion, colors, and creeds, or as much as we can be. If you're a pedophile, stay the fuck away from us. Anywho. What is your experience with spirituality and kink?
So, I haven't done anything Christian related in a very long time. I've been pagan from a very, very young age. Like it's a weird duality because like I live in the South and have to like deal with rather aggressive forms of Baptist Christianity, and I've dealt with harassment from it, but I also grew up hearing like all of my fairy tales were Norse myth because like I'm an immigrant kid, family comes from Denmark, right? So I ended up gravitating towards paganism very, very early, and I didn't necessarily see anything wrong with sex, because mostly, like, I did a lot of self-raising when it comes to my background. So I mentored all of these things myself, and part of a lot of pagan religions, religion isn't even the right term, spirituality is the right term, because they don't have an orthodoxy.
Unlike most of the South and most of the other portions of the Western world, and even some of South America.
Yeah, they all have an orthodoxy because they have the generally they'll teach from the same Bible. They've got a central authority when it comes to their doctrine.
Specifically, the King James Bible. Don't ask. Why the fuck do I still remember that? Oh yeah,
it's the most popular Bible.
Indoctrination.
From there, because a lot of pagan religions are New Age, with like the foundation of the historical foundation of Wicca with Richard Gardner. A lot of people will contest whether or not he's the one that founded it, or if it's a long-standing line of religions. That's not the fight I'm here for today. Or
that's another fight.
Or they're Reconstructionist, like Norse paganism or Celtic Christianity or all that. So that, like, spiritualities that stopped being taught for a while and then were reconstructed and started again. So any involvement with any of these, if you have a certain level of individuality, like if you've started making decisions for yourself, there are going to be aspects that you attend to more than others. And as I was finding like a spiritual worldview system at the same time that I was finding my spiritual beliefs, they coincided. So, like, I've done a lot of research on spiritual sex and all this and whatnot. So I guess we need to define spirituality, right?
That would probably be the best thing as far as like right now is concerned, because spirituality can take a whole different aspect. Because I know you have the concept of organized religion. Mm-hmm. That's one form of spirituality. There's the other I believe there's a gradation as far as that's concerned, because then you have people like yourself that are pagan and that have very, very different aspects of what spirituality means to them, as opposed to what Orthodox religion is concerned.
Yeah, so the main difference, well, first of all, spirituality is a set of beliefs and worldviews that guide your behavior and usually are referenced to non-tangible forces in some way. That may be as simple as your philosophies on science. It may be how you believe spirits themselves function. It may be your belief in deifics. It may be just how you think people function on an essential level. All of these are worldviews that kind of fall into the purview of spirituality. But the biggest difference is that spirituality is personal, religion is structural.
Yeah.
So religions are institutions. They're big things. They have to be organized for the most part.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid definition. And I believe how we're going to go and break this entire episode down is we've gone through that we both have a very similar yet slightly different way of like getting involved in the kink scene with our respective. Well, I stopped being religious or spiritual in a long time and started being a lot more logical. You still have a lot of spiritual aspects about yourself, and that you still enjoy kink as a normal human being. Well, normal.
I wouldn't go that far.
Fair. Normal in the sense of kink, as opposed to normal in the sense of the worldview, because there's a lot of interesting things that we can talk about as far as like how certain people that are religious, pious, and spiritual get involved in kink as a lifestyle. Because I've met a number of people, actually some of them are close friends that are Catholic and kinky, or Catholic and poly, and it's a very, very interesting thing when you consider that classification, or hell, even Catholic and gay. Mind you, the Bible doesn't mention anything about being gay,
correct,
homosexuality. It mentions pedophilia. So
right.
we'll hammer that nail on the head right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting as people, because we both live in the States, and the concept of religion is so ingrained into religion mixed with spirituality is so ingrained in our culture, even in the Bible Belt, that it's almost doctrine.
Yeah, I really do believe that humanity and spirituality have been interacting with each other so hard for so long that there's not going to be any place that you can go that doesn't really have some form of spirituality impressing worldviews on large amounts of people. And even in religious context. But I think a lot of them are so... you see it so often that it's not really a thing.
It's almost like second nature type stuff.
I think people will bring attention to it in the South because it's a purveyor of violence here. It is a thing that can get you killed and has gotten a lot of people killed. Yeah.
Which is the darker side of this part of the conversation, because it gets pretty bad when you start thinking about just how ingrained and how misinformed and misinterpreted a lot of the things in these books that are supposed to be basic structures for morality. And I say basic because morality is a very interesting concept. Yeah. And how it just for acting a specific way, it can get you fucking murdered. And then you turn that ideology and mix it in with kink, whereas because we're in a very openly sexual space, sexual can mean a variety of things. Just being in a cuddle pile can be classified as a sexual act if you really want to be nitpicky about it. And this concept of you're supposed to be in some form and fashion, you're not supposed to have premarital sex,
right?
Or be a bit adventurous with your own sexuality. These are things that I've had questions for, and there are some instances where it's like, well, just because I'm religious or just because I'm spiritual doesn't necessarily mean that is my entire identity. Yeah. I think that's something we should focus on as well, because it's not. Some people view it as their entire identity. I should know. I have family members that base their entire identity off the fact that they're Catholic. Yeah, which is not a very, very, very cash money thing of them, but
it's really important to some people. I like to point out my experiences being in the LGBTQ sphere, where I've had friends complain about other friends of mine, and they're like, why do they have to act so gay? And I'm like, well, that's their thing. To be able to do that is a form of resistance. Yeah. Being able to have that be such a big aspect of your personality and continue to exist in a hostile world is a statement. It's a form of resistance, of everyday resistance, as opposed to like protest resistance. So it's an important thing and it's valid. And that same mechanism is what influences anybody that makes their whole personality about one thing. They are because usually this one thing isn't just a regular part of a person, and if it is, it's turned up so much that people notice it. Like the fact that you could even notice it to point it out means it's significant enough. They've made investments with their behavior into that thing. So they think for some reason that this needs to be more important, and they have become a paragon of being that thing.
Yeah, I can see that as a way that some people, when we talk about public kink or like being publicly outed, is probably the more correct way to explain it. It's like I'm publicly outed. People in my actual like IRL job know I am kinky. Like there's no way around it. Because that's the easiest way for me to be like, look, this is who I am. You deal with it or you don't. Because that's part of my personality. Is like I have this other side of me that I wear as a badge of honor. Right. And that does translate into some people with their spirituality. Like this is their thing. Like if you go into some kinky spheres of places, there's a lot of Viking Norse stuff iconography that comes up, like usually Mjolnir and all that stuff with Thor's hammer. And there's a whole lot of different aspects of that. Like some people use Tantra as another form of like expanded spirituality and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest one that I'm aware of as like intertwined like sexual awakenness or anything of the sort.
Mm-hmm.
Or openness is that fact.
I'm a pretty big fan of Tantra.
I can see it, but I think but my headspace for that is a bit weird. I've tried it once, and it's a very weird concept for me, and it's just like a lot of the question bubbles came up.
It requires a lot of buying in, so it's very prohibitive to people that want to just try it out, because just trying it out means that you have to go into it like all fucking in, which is difficult. Like, I'm not even going to say difficult for some people. It is a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I believe it, and this is why there's not a lot of people that do it, and there's why there's extensive information about it, because you're supposed to be invested into this act, just like we in kink are invested into our acts. Like, you could come into the kinky sphere with little to no knowledge and walk out like, I need to invest in all the toys and all the things. That's how much you dive yourself into it, and I think spirituality does play a part into that, because you have to buy into some things when it comes to spirituality and religion. You have to buy into the fact that you're going to believe in something like an afterlife. You're going to believe in something that is deific, or that's going to help, like a book is going to help you with your moral codes. You have to buy into that. Yeah. And I think that does...
You might. It might be bought into for you by your upbringing.
It's true.
So when I like to talk about spirituality, I like to structure it like any other social science parameter, because if we get into behavior, we're moving into psychology. But you've got a big social structure that is whatever domain you want to talk about, and then that generates all the other parts of culture. So it generates your rituals, it generates your worldviews, it generates your norms. It generates how you classify reality, which is the most complicated of those, and it generates the other one that I always forget about. There's 5 of them.
Someone in the comments, please let us know what the 5th one is.
It's called the 5 forms of cultural knowledge, and it's one of the biggest things I learned from anthropology. And basically, you get a web made out of these things, and you can start to assemble something when you start putting them together. So if we have if we start with one domain, let's say we start with Catholic Christianity, right?
Right.
And that is going to generate... you may learn things in different orders. If you are a child, what you're probably going to learn first is a combination of norms, and as those norms get explained, you'll understand the worldviews. We don't do this. Why do we not do this? You're 5, shut the fuck up. And then you're like, why do we do this? Oh, well, you're 10... So now we do this because of this passage comes out of this book, and then that codes of, my worldview is we do things that are in the book.
Yep.
And then, you go to church on whatever day that you go to church, because it's not always the same. But that becomes a ritual that you do, and these things start feeding into each other. And then we have a lot of fun when these things start to interact with other things. Like we have Christianity and we have kink. And sometimes before those two things come together, somebody may have had an experience where some of the worldviews that they had were invalidated, but they might be connected to each other, but they're not always when it comes to worldviews. So sometimes you can have certain ones deactivated and be like, well, I know I can't trust the church, the book isn't always right, but I know that I have faith in the Lord. And whatnot. So some of these will activate, some of these will deactivate, and you have fun events where you're like, wow, nuns are a thing that are good, and I'm really horny. So we put those two things together.
Insert blasphemy play.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it comes from, because that worldview of a view towards a certain kind of practitioner gets altered by other events. So things will start to cross-pollinate with each other. As the social structure of sex and the substructure of kink become involved with the religious structure of Christianity and the substructure of Catholicism, there's like a synthesis. And this creates a big web that can be analyzed with the same smaller web we were talking about earlier.
That is definitely one of the ways to analyze it. It's just when I was brought up as Catholic and everything, I was always told by my dad to never do one or two things while you're speaking to people. Never talk about politics, never talk about religion. So one thing you're never supposed to talk about. And in kink, we're inherently open with each other. So
kink is political.
Kink, remember what we just said, kink is political, because we will be talking about that in a later episode, especially now that the elections are coming up. Jesus Christ. Anywho, this concept of being open and honest with each other is like, okay, well, I am kinky, but I'm also of this religious denomination, or this is my spiritual pathway, or these are the things that I inherently hold as dear to me, just like you hold the concept of not having any
values. That's the last one.
Values.
There
we go. We've now come full circle on that one, and I still find it a bit interesting that you have some people that are on the very, very extreme of these concepts. I have met people that are of the Muslim faith that are kinky, which is a very interesting thing because, I guess, what we said earlier, that the concept of sexuality is very strict, very, very like close knit, and you're not supposed to do anything outside that marriage or before it, for that matter. Same thing with Judeo-Christian religions. And this plays into a really interesting, like, because it's the concept of good and evil, what's right for you, what's wrong for you. And I think that also may play into that concept of, I can do these things because I will eventually get a pardon from whatever deity is going to be doing the pardoning if I ask for it. And then I think that ends up turning into this interesting like cog where I can do these things and still be forgiven, and this interesting like wheel keeps spinning as a form of like this or that or that or the other. Sometimes that is the case, other times it's not.
Worldviews can work like they can work on the same mechanisms that scientific knowledge work for us. They can work all in the theoretical, and you can have people making the effective equation that you just laid out. It like, I can do this because this gets discounted by this, yada yada yada. And I feel like a lot of people discount that because you can't just I can put numbers behind it, but it's not intuitive to put numbers right next to all these things. But they work on the exact same mechanisms. One thing that I have a good buddy that like he's very atheist, but the way that he talks about science and stuff like that, I'm like, this is functioning for you the same way that religion functions for most people. Your religion is science. Your holy books are these physics textbooks. One of your biggest values is like evaluation and analysis. You will trust somebody inherently that does more analysis than somebody who doesn't. That's a value. And they function on the exact same mechanisms.
Yeah. And there's also an interesting topic that we probably should discuss about how some people want to get into kink, just like your friend that's atheist and believes wholeheartedly that science is basically his one true Bible.
Yeah.
Any form of whatever textbook. Kink can be that for people too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's kind of where we were going to go with this. We wanted to break down the concept of like, yes, religion is a part of what that kink and religion can intertwine and intermix, because that's just how humans work. We will inherently try to mesh with each other. Keep people in the same room long enough, they'll end up fucking, regardless of denomination or prejudice.
I'll have to try that sometime.
Me too. So, you see sometimes like this, because we have books, we have literature, we have podcasts, we have classes, or well, now online classes of these different ways to live by as far as kink is concerned. And I think some people do take it to the spiritual aspect of it, because most kinky values are inherently good and they have a decent morality behind them. You want to do things with explicit consent. You want to have everybody be happy. You want yourself and your partners to be happy. You want open and honest communication. You want to do things safe and consensually. You want to also make sure that all the things that you're doing are going to inherently equal a good time. And some people get and delve head first into this as a relatively spiritual aspect because this is an entirely different worldview, entirely different morals than what you're used to, especially to somebody that is like come out of a different type of religion or a different type of spiritual experience, or sometimes not having them at all.
Right.
And then now there's this nice little neat structure that we typically go by, and it becomes this, and you will see it depending on who, if you go to events after the virus, you see people that are inherently like, this is their life, this is their livelihood, this is what makes them who they are. And that turns into a spiritual aspect. And it's a very interesting way, because I used to view my kink life as this is inherently all it is me. Period. You can't have tentacle without being kinky.
Right.
In reality, that's actually not true, because I haven't really been doing anything for a while. Does that still make me less kinky? No, but that doesn't really detract from who the hell I am.
Yeah, that's you've got both identity and performance going on there, and just because you can't perform doesn't mean it disappears from identity, but it might for some people.
Yeah.
If their real identity is a person that likes being around their friends and all their friends are horny kinky people, you know, that aspect of their identity or that aspect of themselves may disappear from their performance, and not be present at all because it was never their identity.
And that plays into a bigger conversation of isolation in kink. We spoke about this a few episodes ago when all of this popped off, that there are people that are having really, really big issues with the fact that they cannot participate in their ritual aspect, their spiritual aspect, that is kink.
Yeah.
And
they have to adapt. And some people don't. Because the concept of, well, kink is everything to me is the same way that some people view their spirituality and religion, is that their religion is everything to them. Without that identifier, they feel like they're nothing. And these are the things that kind of mesh spirituality and kink in a nifty little box. You can do just about anything with, like, some people with video games, some people with anime, some people with any other subculture and genre of things. Some people do it with politics. Right.
And I find it fascinating how this is only getting more exacerbated with current world antics that are going on. Let's see here. What other forms of spirituality have you seen other forms of spirituality in kink? As far as, like,
I think if there is a spirituality, then there is a kinky person practicing it.
That's a very good, just like flatline everything.
Yeah, pretty much. I think there are some that are more conducive. Like, you've got people that are rebelling against an unjust system of Christianity that may delve headlong into kink because they were like, don't do that. And they're like, I'm going to do that now. Because a lot of subcultures are based around rejection. It's the entire point of punk.
Yep.
You've got others like... a lot of paganisms are big into celebrating sex, and those things will manifest into kink because so much of the reconstructed paganism is so heavily based around ritual and identity factors that it just makes sense for you to see, let's take a pagan ritual and a sex and put them in the same box. And you have a thing that would not really have been considered kinky outside of we have more rules, transform into something that is inherently kinky.
I can definitely see that.
So that's for all you horny witches out there.
We see you.
Yeah, I would like to see you.
They're all over TikTok, dude. Like, I keep coming across, like, kinky witches and just like, this isn't for me.
I keep coming across them, but, like...
They're not here.
Yeah, well, they're not really interactable, you know, because, like, you see them and they're like, I have 100K followers, and you're like, well, I'm never going to fucking talk to them, am I?
This is true. Yeah.
Your fame has paralyzed you. You must put on a mask and go out into public as a peasant if you want happiness.
So I'm doing just fine then, because I dress like a peasant consistently. My God, what is... well... Yeah, Yeah, I'm definitely a peasant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm perfectly fine with that. Spirituality is such a very interesting topic when you start delving into just like the idiosyncrasies that come along with it.
Yeah, I think the biggest hang up for a lot of people is the difference between spirituality and religion.
Yep.
Because I'm sure you've met plenty of good Christian people out there that are like, yeah, I believe in all these things, and here's a list of things that I'm supposed to believe that I think are bullshit. And we're like, we like you. And you've seen a spirituality being extracted from a religion in that very moment. Like, you witnessed it happen.
Yeah.
And that can be a very powerful thing. Spirituality becomes really fun discussions because if you can get somebody to talk about their spirituality, assuming they aren't lying, they're going to tell you about what the operating system of their life is. Because that's basically what worldviews do. They influence everything because they're the programming for how you think a lot of the time.
Yeah, and there's another good anecdote for this one, because my not even growing up, like after I got out of high school and I had a long discussion with my old man about this. It's like, hey, like, why don't you consider yourself religious? He's like, no, I'm spiritual. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't need a place or a thing to signify how I base myself on. I believe in this. This is how I base my life on it. There are things that I like and there are things that I don't like. And that opened up that concept of, okay, my father understands what spirituality and religion is, and he's separated these two for himself. And that is something that was very important to me, because like he was able to do this in his own space, on his own time, without getting bogged down by all of the ridicule and the bullshit that comes with it. Because there you will get ridicule. I mean, almost everywhere you will. It comes with the territory, especially if you're like sitting here going, you know what, I like these aspects that make me a good person. The bad aspects that don't make me a good person, we're going to get rid of those. And I can still be kinky, and I can still have the fun, and I can still believe what I want. That's entirely fine. And that's hopefully what we strive for as a bunch of like people in a really sheltered, I wouldn't say sheltered, a very close-knit community.
Yeah. And I think understanding that anytime there is a social structure and you deviate from it, there is going to be tension with people that are really loyal to that structure.
Usually.
And that's just natural goings on. Like, if you've got a whole bunch of things you think are wrong about Catholicism, and then like you go to a mass and you don't follow the mass ritual correctly because you don't believe in those things, there's liable to be tension.
Usually, if you call the communion wafers Jesus, I'm sure someone will get pissed.
Yeah, they won't like that.
Yeah.
Unless they already really like you.
And even then, you still might get scoffs from every other which way. This was an interesting topic. I don't think there's anything more I can discuss on the subject without delving directly into religion, because the classification between the two gets very muddied very quickly, especially when you start specifically like harping or hearkening on a specific type of religion. Well, the only reason we're talking about Christianity is because it is prevalent where we're at.
Right.
If we were in the UK, we can talk about being Protestant probably a lot better than being Christians or anything of the sort.
A big thing that I know I want to emphasize is in the more recent episodes, I'm bringing a lot of structuralism and a lot of method in here, and this is to give anybody that's interested the tools to be able to do these analyses yourself. That's a very big goal of mine. I think a big goal of this entire podcast is teaching skills.
Yeah,
that will be useful in the community and hopefully useful outside of it. So, like, even if the only goal from this is you get somebody to pay attention to you for longer because you were able to sound smart about the thing, all the way up to you have managed to protect yourself, then absolutely. I can see how these skills would be less applicable, the analytical ones, to protecting yourself, but like, I don't want to be all doom and gloom all the time. If there is any group of people that love their toys, it is us.
I am a sucker for my toys.
So this is just a brain toy for you.
It is a good thing to discuss these things and not be considerably doom and gloom like we've been in previous episodes. Like the first few episodes we were doing were very, very doom and gloom, even if it was just like the 101s. Because again, when we started this, we both had very, very like strong opinions about the Kink feed. And now we've kind of found our ground as far as like, you know what, this should probably be a lot more informative and a lot more inviting and welcoming. And this, again, you won't really come across this too much as far as like spirituality and Kink. But it's just, it's easier for you to go like, hey, if this is you, we see you, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Like, I hope you continue to do the thing that makes you happy. Yeah. Because we all just want to be happy.
I like to think I am directly servicing the people with the professor schoolgirl kink by giving them things to pontificate on.
That is definitely a kink that is very, very prevalent.
It's one of the ones that I don't have, and like it's one of the I like to see it happening. It's like in a not in a horny way, just like in a I'm fascinated way.
I can see that. That's good. I like the okay, this is like just a random discussion at a coffee table with like 4 or 5 different people that you just randomly met off the fucking street. Like, oh, by the way, did you know this? That's how I look at it.
Somebody's like, I'm kinky, and then you're like, no, I'm kinkier because I know the theory, and then you talk about structuralism for 4.5 hours, and then people are like, wow, I sure hate fucking listening to that, dude.
Exactly.
And then they leave you at the coffee shop, and you have to call an Uber to get home. What's going on?
This may or may not have happened before. But I believe this is a good place to leave off. This was a good chunk of information.
You know I like chunks.
Extra thick with 3 C's. But as always, we do thank you for listening, those that are. Again, do the follows on the social media platforms. I see the Instagram has gotten 20 people. I'm just like, oh no. Oh boy. But hopefully soon we will probably be discussing as of next episode after this one will definitely be politics and kink, because that conversation definitely needs to happen. And it's not gonna. We're gonna try not to make it doom and gloom, but we do want to emphasize that kink is political, and there are reasons behind it. Then afterwards, I believe I'm going to get in contact with 2 other people, and we will be discussing as an open table discussion race play.
Oh boy.
And why there's good and bad aspects of it. And I know a lot of it comes into like people of color like myself taking it back, like the concept of like being utilized and all that stuff, or being fetishized and all that stuff. So that's going to be a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, the thing I'm both scared of and the most interested in doing there is I am also a white boy. And I expect to be yelled at's not the wrong term, but used as a reference, given dirty glares.
I mean, they won't be able to do it from the screen.
I don't know that.
That's fair. That's fair. Also, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's going to be an interesting one, especially in today's like interesting climate. But I do want to have that conversation because it's been popping up on my feed a lot more. There's actually an interesting article that my roommate sent me about like race play and kink, and it's just like, oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, that sounds heavy.
The article was heavy, but it was also done by like BuzzFeed and
scholars of our time.
Yeah.
BuzzFeed.com.
Yeah, so that can take that one with a grain of salt.
The
but
Church
at the same
of .com.
Church of .com. But anyway, as always, thank you guys for listening. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir, Jeanne. We'll catch you next time.
Stay horny.
Peace.